During the War of 1812, 1,000 British troops seized control of Fort Ontario on May 6, 1814. Fort Ontario rests at the mouth of the Oswego River and Lake Ontario. The first fort was built in 1755. 3 more would follow. The 1839 version still stands today. Fort Ontario's location gave it some distinct advantages, including Native American relations, defense, and trade. Following the 7 Years' War, Indigenous nations did not like their land and way of life to be threatened by invading British colonists. This led to Pontiac's Rebellion, 1763 to 1765. In 1766, British officer William Johnson and Ottawa Chief Pontiac signed the Treaty of Fort Ontario. Pontiac's Rebellion ends. The American Revolution was a war between Great Britain and the American colonies. The American colonies fought for their independence and they won, and the United States was born. The British Army took care of Loyalist families. Women and children loyal to the Crown lived and worked at Fort Ontario. George Washington, the American commander-in-chief, saw Fort Ontario as a huge threat. One of his last orders was to destroy the fort. George Washington told Colonel Willett, "Such works that cannot be consumed by fire or easily erased by the soldiers are to be, if practicable, blown up. If practicable, they are to be blown up if it is within the compass of your power to do it." The British rebuilt and controlled Fort Ontario until the signing of John Jay's Treaty in 1794. The treaty took effect in 1796, giving the USA full ownership of Fort Ontario. Great Britain hindered American trade in Europe. It forced United States seamen to work on its undermanned warships, thus beginning the War of 1812. How about I give you some sweets and you mop the deck?
Hey!
In 1813, American forces at Fort Ontario stopped a British attack. Nice job, guys. This place seems real safe for now. In 1814, 7 British ships towing gunboats and troop barges headed to Fort Ontario. They were held up by a storm at Duck Island. On May 5th, 1814, the British fleet attack. Fort Ontario falls a day later, on May 6th. Ah, what a wonderful sight. Oswego has had a long history with lighthouses, and Fort Ontario is no different. Unfortunately, the one that used to be here blew up. Not really, it was just dismantled in 1841, but it would have been pretty cool if it blew up. The lighthouse was originally 59 feet tall. People thought it needed to be a little taller. Between 1868 and 1869, they added 15 feet. Oh? Yay! Do 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 do. The Army used the Lightkeeper's house for sleep-in storage. It was small, with only 4 bedrooms. The Lightkeeper's house was used as a hospital during the Civil War and World War II. Women, often soldiers' wives, lived in the keeper's house. They were employed as laundresses. The original Lightkeeper's house from 1822 had many uses throughout its history. Fort Ontario cat mascot seized by eagle. Raccoons thrown in guardhouse for messing with barrack trash. We can't have that. Blue cloth, brass buttons, blue cap, gold shoulder boards. This was the uniform of a Civil War captain. A new day and a new opportunity for Fort Ontario. During the Civil War, Fort Ontario served as a drilling, induction, and recruitment center for Union troops. What is the Civil War? The Civil War was a war between the northern free states and the southern slave states, 1861 to 1865. Here, Union or Northern soldiers were supposed to wear a uniform which consisted of the following: light blue pants, dark blue coat, and forage cap. With the training at Fort Ontario, the Northern Army would prove victorious. The Union war efforts would end slavery in the United States. Ontario was also a hiding place for federal records. Later, Fort Ontario fell into ruin. No worries, there will be more uses left in this old stone star. African American soldiers, also known as Buffalo Soldiers, faced racism in the American South. They were disliked because of the color of their skin. The U.S. Army began to look for a safer home for their African American troops. In 1908, the 24th Infantry of African American soldiers was sent from the Philippines to Fort Ontario. They were less likely to face racism in the American North. city of Oswego, New York, was known for its acceptance of all people. The Buffalo Soldiers would be safe here. Later, other people seeking refuge would find help at Fort Ontario. In the 1930s and 40s, Germany was led by a man named Adolf Hitler. Hitler hated the Jewish people and tried to get rid of them. This is known as the Holocaust. Many Jewish people were locked in places with horrible conditions called concentration camps. They were made to work hard with little food and water. They often died or were killed. People who flee their country for safety are called refugees. Jewish refugees fled Europe to save their lives from the Holocaust. U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt invited 982 Jewish refugees from Italy to take shelter at Fort Ontario. It was the only time during World War II the United States allowed refugees of the Holocaust to enter the country. The journey to America was difficult for the refugees. It took 2 weeks for them to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Still, they remained grateful for their safety. If you're coming from wartime, war-damaged Europe to see this enormous sight, Lower Manhattan and the Statue of Liberty, I don't think there was a dry eye on the deck. Evo Leatherer, refugee. However great was their safety, some people did not like being fenced in. Walter Greenberg, a refugee, says, "I felt deceived. I felt as if I should have been free. I felt wonderful. I had doctors, I had nurses, I went to school, I had food. But what good is all the amenities of life if one still isn't free?" After 18 months, President Harry Truman announced that the Jewish refugees were finally free to leave Fort Ontario. Wow, it looks like I just time traveled to present-day Fort Ontario. From protecting to peace treaties, to training camps, to refugee shelters, Fort Ontario remains a welcoming place for all people. Paper? Me? Cool. You can even picnic at Fort Ontario. Fort Ontario has the most amazing sunsets. I also love to fly my kite. My friends also love Fort Ontario. We come here to play hide and seek. In the Lake Ontario breeze, you can feel the spirit of Fort Ontario's past and the sense of its impact on its storied history.